Assalamu alaikum students. In the last class we were studying about the compression members and we have seen that there are different types of the failures in occurring that occurs in the compression members. The most prominent in the compression members is the buckling, and we have seen that there are different types of the buckling failures like flexural buckling failure, local buckling failure, and torsional buckling failure. Today we are going to study the buckling in the further details in terms of the elastic buckling and inelastic buckling. So the buckling that we have defined in the last class is the sudden buckling is defined as the bending of the members. Now, the buckling can also be defined as the deformation or the large deformations in the structure that occur in the structure due to the slight increase of the existing load under which the structure has already exhibited some deformations before the load actually got increased. So it is basically the apart from the bending, it could be the deformations or the large deformation in the structures which increases with the passage of time due to the existing load, or it is existing load could be the externally applied load that is permanently attached to the structure, that is the dead load of the structure, or the self weight of the member is itself also take parts in the buckling as well. Now, buckling is usually occurs in the straight member, which is homogeneous or centrally loaded column. Centrally loaded column means the column which is axially loaded, subjected to the axial compression forces, and it undergoes the bending like it's shown here. Like we have initially have a column which is perfectly straight and the member is homogeneous, that it has the uniform cross sectional area over the entire length of the column. And what is when it is subjected to an axial force which is centrally loaded into the column tend to goes under the bending, and this bending is called as the buckling, and it is defined as the or it is identified failure as a failure limit state for the columns, that it has some limit state about the point at which the column maximum bend itself, and once that limit is breached or it is overcome, the column tends to fail. And the value of the load, that depends that whether our column is going to sustain the applied loading against the buckling or it is going to be failed and it's become unstable, is called as the critical load. And the critical load is the load when which the columns bends and they said to be have the buckling phenomena in them. Therefore, the critical load is also called as the buckling load in the compression members. Moreover, this critical buckling load is usually theoretically calculated by using the Euler formula, and its value is PCR or P crippling load or P critical load equal to pi square EI over L square, where pi is a constant having a value of 3.1416, and E is the elasticity of the member, I is the inertia of the member, and L is the length of the member, which is unsupported length of the member. And we can also represent this formula in terms of the radius of the gyration as well, and by using the formula of stress is equal to load per unit area. So when we find out the stress, it becomes to be the crippling load divided by area. So it's area of the column got divided by this, and we get the force or the stress, crippling force or crippling stress in the columns. And this later on crippling force and stress could be represented in terms of the slenderness ratio as well, because we know that the radius of gyration r is equal to under root I over a, which we have studied this relation in the last class. And once we input the value of this I over a in our questions, it will become as pi square e r square by l square. And one would take this r square into the denominator develop develop the relation for slenderness ratio. It becomes that F crippling stress is equal to pi square E over L by R whole square. Therefore, the tendency of the compression members under the buckling is governed by the radius of gyration, which is the value of the L by R. And we, we have two main types of the buckling. First one is called as the elastic buckling, which we have studied here, in which we use the Euler formula. The second type of buckling that we have is called as the inelastic buckling. And for inelastic buckling, we have two main theories. First one is called as tangent modulus theories, and under this theory, it states that the maximum tensile stress or the maximum tangent stress that can the column can sustain can be calculated using the formula Et pi square over L effective O by R whole square. And this relationship is almost the same which we use for the elastic columns. And this theory can later on be extended for the inelastic region as well, that we indirectly extend our inelastic region towards the inelastic region instead of considering the actual failure path in the compression members or in the columns. The second theory for the inelastic buckling is called as the reduced modulus theory, in which we basically reduce the actual modulus of the column by some amount. And if we have this theory is usually applied on the rectangular columns, that this theory cannot be applied on the circular columns. So whenever we have a rectangular cross section, the reduced modulus, that is ER, could be calculated as 4 times of modulus into ET over under root E plus E2 whole square, where E is the elastic modulus of the structure and ET is the tensile modulus of the structure or the column. Therefore, we can find out its the corresponding critical stress as sigma r is equal to ER, where we use the reduced elastic modulus pi square over L effective by R whole square. So its formula is slightly changed, that instead of using the exact elastic modulus that we used or the total modulus that we use or the tangent modulus that we used in the tangent modulus theory, here we use the reduced modulus for calculating the critical stress, and this theory is called as reduced modulus theory. Now there are the many factors that affects the buckling in the columns, and the three major factors of them are listed here. The first one is the end connections. It means that the conditions of the supports to which the column has been connected, top support of the column and bottom support of the column. Second is the eccentricity of the loads or the crookedness, that whether the columns are loaded perfectly eccentric in nature or they are centric in nature. Third one is the residual stresses, that what are the stresses that are remain in the structure after the application of the load. Let's discuss these one by one. First one is the end conditions. End condition mean the rotation of the ends of the columns in the building frame, and they are usually limited by the connections as columns are usually connected to the beams. So the rotation of the column ends is usually limited by the corresponding beams connecting to the columns as well. As we have more than one beam that could be connecting into the columns, therefore we have to find out the effective length that we used for determining the for when applying the critical load or for applying finding out the critical stress in the member. And which once if we use the Euler crippling load, and we generalize this formula by pi square ei over kl square, instead of general l square we use introduce the term here called as k, where k is l, where kl is basically the effective length of the column. That is called effective length means the length which is unsupported, or in other words the word length of the column which is from one spot till another spot of the column excluded the spot length. And k is basically the effective length factor, and the value of the k is dependent on these spot conditions, whether we have both end fixed, one end pinched, one end hinged, or one end fixed, one end free, and its values are different depending on these conditions. Moreover, the end conditions also affects the elastic and the inelastic buckling as well. If we have a column having the both end fixed, it means that it can support almost four times the load as compared to the column with the pinned ends, or the column with the pinned spots. This benefit means that it is decreases with decreasing the value of the L by R, or the slenderness ratio until crippling force finally becomes independent of the values of the K. As we increase the value of this L by R, the value of the K is going to be independent as seen from here. For two graphs, suppose we have a K is equal to 1, they tends to decrease with the increase in the L by R ratio, but with the passage of the time, they are going to be straighten each other. Similarly, if we have a K is equal to zero point 0.5, its crippling force will be larger as compared to the K is equal to 1. But again, with the passage of time, it is also going to normalize each other. And the effect of the K is only minimized when we use a larger values of the radius of the gyration, or it means that it becomes independent of the K factors. The second factor is that affects the buckling is initial crookedness. Initial crookedness, or I can also be called as the initial curvature or initial bending in the member. This initial bending basically causes another secondary bending movement. The primary bending moment is due to loads, and this secondary bending moment is basically produced due to the this initial crookedness, and this goes to increase the further bending deflections that are generated due to the bending moments. So this primary bending is going to enhance the effect of the bending deflection, and ultimately it results in the increase in the amplitude of the external applied compressive forces. So it is going to facilitate the already applied external force. So if we have external force of 100 caps and we have an initial curvature or initial bending in the member, then it means that instead of 100k, it seems that we are going to apply the force of 120 kips on the structure. So this increase in the bending is the structure or increase in the bending moment is basically due to this secondary movement which is generated due to the initial crookedness in the structures. No, a stable section or the stable deflected shape in the column is possible only as long as the external moment, and which is the product of the load and the deflection. As we know that the moment is a product of load and the deflection, it does not exceed the internal resistance of any sections. Whenever the internal resistance of the sections got increased or got breached by the external loads, it is going to cause the buckling in the columns. So if we when we have an initial bending in the member and second bending by the load, then this bending could be resisted only till the member resists the bending internally. Its internal material properties resist the bending. Whenever this internal bending resistance of the material is exceeded, it is going to cause the buckling in the columns. Moreover, whenever a straight column buckles, it assumes a stable equilibrium or the bent equilibrium, but with a larger load. In the crooked columns, deflection increases from beginning of the loading. So whenever we have a crooked column, that is a column with the initial already a bending, the deflection of the bending such increases from the beginning of the loading that whenever the load is applied, it is going to deflect, and the column goes to the unstable conditions. And one and goes to the unstable conditions when it reaches towards the maximum load carrying capacity of the column. And when we have our straight columns, the column is going to assume a stable deformation and bent equilibrium, and it is going to deform at a very higher shape, while the column in which we have already bending in the column, and when we apply the load, the column is going to bend itself further, causing a unstable in these conditions. And with these unconditional conditions increases with the increase in the maximum load carrying capacity of the column. The third factors that affects the buckling is called as the residual stress. In tension members, the residual stresses causes the section to yield at a stress which is very much lower than the yield stress of the materials, due to which the elongation of the material is at a particular load is greater, that can be calculated from the elastic properties. Why? And this complete yielding of the cross sections does not occur until the strain that we applied in the structures equal the yield strain of the materials, base materials. So our column is not going to yield until the yielding of the base material or the yielding of the steel is going to occur in the sections. Moreover, the residual stresses does not affect the load that corresponds to the full yielding of the cross sections. So whenever we have a full yielding of the cross sections, the residual stress does not affect any in any terms the load carrying capacity or increase, neither increases the load neither it decreases the load. No, as far as the code requirements are concerned for the compression members, we have some specifications from AISC manual. As for LRFD specifications, it states that the design strength of the columns for the flexural buckling is equal to phi c times Pn, and the value of the phi given by the code is 0.85, and which is basically the resistance factor for the compression members. And this value of 0.85 is the same which we use for the concrete structures. You have might remember about that we use some most of the time in concrete structure we use the value of 0.85 times 0.85 f prime cap. The value of 0.85 is basically the resistance factor for the compression member, and it is same for the steel and for the concrete as well. So the load or the nominal carrying capacity of the structure is then becomes the area of the gross area of the members times stress or the critical stress or the crippling stress of the members. And this value of this crippling stress or the critical stress is dependent on the factor called as lambda c. And if we have a value of lambda c less than equal to 1.5, the crippling force or the crippling stress is equal to 0.658 lambda c whole square times Fy. And once we have a value of lambda c more than 1.5, the value of crippling force given by the AISC code is 0.877 by lambda c whole square times Fy, and the value of the lambda c can could be calculated using the relation KL by R phi into under root Fy over E, where K is the support condition that whether we have two pin and hinge ends columns or the one cantilever columns or the prop cantilever columns. L is the end supported length of the columns. R is the radius of gyration of phi is constant and value of 22 by 5 by 22 by 7. Fy is the yield stress of the steel. E is the elasticity of the steel. And once we find out the value of the lambda c, we can determine that whether we have going to use the equation of crippling force, where depending on the value of the lambda, whether we have a value of more than 1.5 or the value is less than or equal to 1.5. Moreover, from this value of the lambda c, we can estimate that whether we are going to have a crippling force is in the elastic region or the inelastic region. Whenever we have a ratio of crippling force to yield stress of 0.39 or more than 0.39, we are going to have a F crippling force of 0.658 lambda c square times Fy. And whenever we have its value is less than 0.39, we are going to using the relation of F crippling force, that is 0.877 by lambda c whole square times Fy. And this way it is also dependent on the lambda c. Whenever we see the value of the lambda c more than 1.5, then it means that we are going to have the ratio of crippling force to yield stress having the ratio of less than 0.39, and we are going to use the formula of F crippling force accordingly. And once the value of the lambda 1.5 is less than or equal to 1.5, and it means that we could have the value of the crippling to yield stress more than 0.39 till 1, and we are going to have a crippling force curve equation 0.65 where lambda c square by f times f9. This is basically the curve fitting equations that we generate after that has been generated after the number of researches. Moreover, let's coming towards the local buckling. if we have a column section that is very thin, or I would say the column which is in the slender shape, that will have a very small size but very large length, then the failure occur in such type of columns is usually due to the local buckling of the columns or local buckling of the flanges. And this local buckling could be in the flange sections or could be in the webs of the columns as well. Before the members reaches the buckling strength, this local buckling strength starts. So this local buckling starts before the actual buckling of the entire member starts. And whenever these thin sections or the thin plates are used to carry the compressive stresses, they are more prone to the buckling about their weak axis due to their small moment of inertia. As we know that the greater the moment of inertia, the greater will the resistance that will be provided by the columns. And once we have the smaller moment of inertia, it means that the chances of the buckling is going to increase, and the chances of the buckling is going to increase in which we have a smaller moment of inertia, or it will be about the axis which is weaker in all down two type of axis. Like here we say the local buckling in the particular column, that we have a thin section or very slender sections, and we have a buckling failures in the flange as well. And this local buckling starts even before the buckling of the entire member starts, because still the sections of the web is in contact or it is the same. So this local buckling is basically generates the induce more stresses or attract more stresses, ultimately leading towards the failure of the sections. And similarly, this local buckling could be in the flanges as well, or this could be in the terms of the laterally buckled beams as well. So if some of the beams that are placed laterally in the columns, they can also buckle in buckling as well. Some of the real life pictures, you can see that here we have a local buckling. The column starts, or the flanges of the columns buckles locally, while the other web of the column is still intact as it is. So this means that area of the column got reduced, or the tensile carrying capacity or the compressive force carrying capacity of the columns got reduced, where the local buckling initiates or the starts, and it is ultimately going to results in the failure of the column as well. Moreover, if the local buckling got initiated in the columns, then it is not possible for the column to develop its complete buckling strength. Means that if local buckling starts in the columns, then there are the chances that the column may not be buckled entirely, or as a member column is not going to buckle in the flexion. It will be buckled in the local buckling only. Therefore, in this condition, we prevent the local buckling in the compression members. We prefer to have a flexure buckling or the complete buckling of the member, because if we have a local buckling, it is going to have, but because this lateral buckling will be initiated at a very low value of the strength or the very low value of the load, while the overall buckling is going to initiate at a very much larger load or a very much larger deformation. Therefore, it equal buckling is usually prevented from controlling the column strength. we prefer that the column strength should be prevented by the flexure buckling. Moreover, local buckling also depends on the slenderness ratio of the member and the yield stress of the materials. Even if less, the local buckling is basically due to the reduced area of the thickness, and this reduced area of thickness is basically related to the slenderness of the column, which is the ratio of the width to thickness, and the yield stress of the material as well. Moreover, each member or each plate element must be stocky enough, that which means that it a base should have a width to thickness ratio that prevents the buckling from governing the column strength. Therefore, we prefer to have a slenderness ratio which should be used for the complete member of the columns or complete length of the column. Moreover, we can calculate the local buckling force or the stresses generated due to local buckling as well, like we calculated for the flexure buckling for the elastic and inelastic regions. And it can be calculated through various ways, and its formula that we used for calculations of the local buckling critical load or the crippling load is used the formula of K pi square E over 12 into 1 minus mu square into B by T whole square, where K is the constant and its value depends on how the columns or edges are supported, and the ratio of the plate to width ratio and the nature of the load as applied on the member or the applied on the columns. While B is the width of the column, T is the thickness of the column, and mu is the factor of the local buckling, and its value is dependent on the strain of the local buckling or the columns. Moreover, this critical stress can also be evaluated by determining the equivalent strengthness ratio for which a column will buckle at the same stress. And for this, we use the formula of E is equal to E times under root tau or reduced thickness. So this value of radius by gyration L by R equivalent comes out to be equal to 3.3 under root R raised to power 4 B by T into under root K. We can use this formula as well for the calculations of the local buckling. But generally this critical of the crippling formula or the crippling force is used for the calculations of the stress that is generated due to local buckling. So that's all for today, and that's we are done with the theory of these compression members, and especially with the buckling of the compression members. In the next lecture, we are going to start the numerical problems related to compression members. But before starting that problems, if you have any doubt in the theory, you are more welcome to ask.